Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Healing Entrepreneur podcast. I'm your host, Ya, and we are back for a new season. So, I wanted to just talk about overall my experience with podcasting and a couple of changes that I do want to make to the podcast, as we grow. And one thing is, I want to just thank everyone who has been listening. Even if you haven't caught every episode, thank you for listening in at all. I can't believe it every time someone tells me I found you from your podcast or I really love your podcast. I just can't believe that I am the girl, the woman, the person with a podcast. So thank you, everyone, for making that dream a reality of having my voice heard and amplified. I so appreciate it. The making of this podcast has definitely been challenging to me in several ways. I am, you know, an entrepreneur, as well as a mom, as well as a wife, and I also run Spoken Black Girl Publishing. The magazine is a lot of responsibility. And I also work. Okay, I got a new part-time job that I'm at, as well as running my business. So, and all of that, on top of all of that, I'm still navigating this journey with ADHD and just trying to figure out how to get all of the things together and scheduled and done. I'm also an MFA student and I am in a remote learning program where I am earning my master's in fine arts in fiction. And fiction writing is my heart and my love, and I have written a novel, Departure Story, and I'm writing another one. I'm writing a couple of novels. I love writing novels, short stories, and I also love poetry. So, one thing that I actually wanted to talk about is the fact that on this podcast, we are going to be kind of changing direction. I want to have more episodes where it's me speaking and talking about my different experiences, especially with running Spoken Black Girl and also, with podcasting. Wait, that was what I was going to say. I want this space to be one where I can share my writing more. How about that? Yeah, I'm going to be reading more from my Substack. Follow me on Substack, okay? A Spoken Black Girl on Substack. And, maybe some poetry, maybe some of my short stories that I write. I really want to have more episodes where it's just me talking and or reading my work as opposed to interview after interview. I kind of started that a little bit last season with the Call Me Ya episode, which was very successful. Thank you for everyone who tuned into that one. I'm just talking about how getting to know my Ghanaian roots. I already knew my Guyanese roots, but even going further back in my lineage and reclaiming that name Ya and what that means to me. So yeah, more episodes like that. And because let me tell you, it is not easy for me, especially to coordinate with guests. And then, although I am an editor of words, okay, I will edit words, to the finest, to the gods. But at the same time, I'm not like a professional audio editor. So I don't want to disappoint any of my guests with, not being able to do really intricate edits and I have my ADHD mind. I love it. I love it. But I sometimes struggle with tasks that take a lot of time and attention, and especially when it's not like what I'm trained in, which is audio editing. So, and of course, I think with doing fewer interview episodes, I will also be able to afford to maybe hire out editing help so that we can get more episodes out faster. So that's definitely a plan that I have. But I just wanted to say that moving forward, I am going to be, or you're going to be hearing just a lot more of my voice, which I hope is what you're here for. So thank you for listening and welcome to the Healing Entrepreneur Podcast. Everyone, welcome back to the Healing Entrepreneur Podcast. I am Ya, your host, and I am going to be reading my Substack post, which is called A Soft Black Woman's Journey to Spiritual Entrepreneurship. And this essay is part of a collection, a nonfiction book that I'm working on titled A Soft Black Woman's Journey to Spiritual Entrepreneurship. So I hope this piece will be a great introduction to what will hopefully be a longer work coming out soon. A Soft Black Woman's Journey to Spiritual Entrepreneurship. What does it mean to be soft? By Spoken Black Girl. To me, soft means living in peace and ease. Although I know it can be described differently by others, soft means I get to be delicate. I get to claim the privileges of femininity. I'm vulnerable. I cry. My emotions matter. It's the power of flow over force. It's rest. It's my self-assured safety, which is by no means guaranteed in this Black and female body. Yes, safety is a requirement for softness. Throughout my life, physical safety was never something I had to search for, although I could make an argument for my emotional and mental safety. For the most part, I had a loving and protective upbringing, but it didn't stop the influence of mainstream society from seeping into my mind. There were influences beyond my control, impacting me without my consent. I would have to become strong to survive in the world as a Black woman. Before I reclaim softness, let me tell you why I rejected it in the first place. I used to believe that I wasn't tough enough. I remember starting my freshman year of high school and thinking, I have to be tough. I have to be an impenetrable wall. I can't let people in. I won't let anyone see me cry or think they hurt my feelings. I had realized early on that I could be teased and taunted or mistreated simply because someone didn't like the way I talked or carried myself. From a young age, I tried my best to be inconspicuous and appealing to others. I didn't want to rock the boat or be ridiculed. In my own family, I often felt that way. My parents are both immigrants from Guyana, a country at the northern tip of South America, with rich Caribbean culture. It's a culture that I understood early on values hardness. It wasn't unusual for people to make jokes or ridicule you for small things, whether it was your immediate family, extended family, or family friends. These jokes were generally thought of as harmless ways to show love. I understood this, but I was always seemingly more sensitive than the rest of my family, and it often got to me. During my adolescence, I found myself experiencing anxiety about going to family functions or having people over for holidays and birthdays. I learned to become a muted version of myself that no one could really find fault with. At the same time, I grew up in a culture where family was everything, even at the expense of one's mental health. I watched my mother go above and beyond her whole life, often exalted as the rock of the family, but sometimes distant as a mother. I yearned for the emotional closeness I saw in other mothers and daughters. At first, I blamed the fact that she had to work so much. But as I got older, I began to understand that work was just a scapegoat for emotional vulnerability. Vulnerability is not something that Caribbean people do well. We love to brag about who had it the hardest, tell stories of how far you had to walk to school or cross a river in a boat to go to church every Sunday, working the farm for your next meal, the lack of good medical care, and the struggles of poverty. Caribbean folk love to tell the American-born generation that we just don't get it. We don't get how hard it was back there and how easy we have it here. But one thing I've learned as I have delved into resolving my own traumas and those hard times is that those hard times don't stay buried in a distant land. They embed themselves in our DNA. They get passed on in the form of anxiety and depression, ADHD, autism, and more. They wait for the generation brave enough to dig it up and work it out because too often the older generation, they're just not ready to do that. They have already escaped the hard life, but it has made them hard in return. It's nobody's fault, of course. Parents do what they must to survive and make life better. I understand that. But every cause has an effect. For me, the effect was that I was a soft girl who was beginning to understand that how I was, my natural state of being was not okay. I had to have thicker skin and not be quite so delicate. The word soft has a negative connotation in the Caribbean. Soft can mean that you're mentally disabled. In other words, you have different needs. And in a society where it's survival of the fittest without very many resources to accommodate those differences, you're likely to be discarded or tossed to the wayside, locked up in a mental hospital and labeled a problem, a burden. Luckily for me, I was born in a country and a time where therapy and mental health have become somewhat normalized. I've been given the opportunity to learn more about myself instead of shoving down my differences. By the age of 17, I was beginning to recognize that I was suffering from anxiety and depression, or at least those were the labels put on me at the time. Really, I was at the beginning of a long process of coming into awareness that I was a high-functioning ADHDer masking to fit in. I was feeling the symptoms of suffocation. My true self was begging to come out, but there was always the fear that I would not be accepted as I was. The first line of action was to go on antidepressants, Zoloft. After all, the college application season was upon me, and soon after that, the beast itself, college. I needed these thoughts and feelings managed and tucked and put away. I needed to be normal so that I could continue to achieve. That was another thing. Not only was I meant to be normal, but I was also slated as a gifted kid. Since elementary school, I was put in the talented and gifted program where me and my parents, as well as the parents of several other high-scoring kids, were told that we had a special aptitude for learning and needed more of a challenge. These days, as all of the gifted kids are now grown up, we reflect on the fact that gifted often coincided with neurodiversity, whether it was ADHD, autism, anxiety, or depression later in life. There were behavioral markers of the gifted. We were considered, we were socially awkward with good grades for the most part. Math was never really my thing, but early on, I showed an aptitude for reading and writing. Us gifted kids tended to have our specialty areas. This carried on through high school, where I was in all AP classes except for calculus. These options were presented to me as an alternative to my weirdness, an answer to my mental suffering. I wasn't a misfit, I was gifted. That checks out, actually. My classmates and I competed for the highest GPAs and to get into top colleges. I ended up at Kenyon, which was known to take kids with my kind of gift for the English language. As I'm typing this, I'm crying. Maybe I'm realizing for the first time that I was always an outlier. If going to college taught me anything, it was that the gifted kids are not okay. As I learned more about myself on my mental health journey, I saw some disturbing symptoms mirrored in my classmates. Anxiety, depression, eating disorders, and narcissism. It was hard to ignore the pain and the fact that so many beautiful people were suffering trying to fit a standard that was never meant to be sustainable for us. In college, I tried to cope with my mental health as best I could. There was a prescription medication I was taking, which often left me feeling emotionless and void of creativity, which I hated. I was also in therapy at the campus counseling center. As one of the few Black women on campus, I often had to explain my experiences as an Afro-Caribbean Black woman to my therapist, a white woman. But she was a very empathetic person, and she understood as best as she could. She encouraged me to start journaling my feelings, and I did. Writing became my main outlet during that time. I filled notebook after notebook, writing almost obsessively during every free moment. One popular coping mechanism on campus was drugs and alcohol. I had been a strict good girl in high school, so I took college as my opportunity to let loose, with often disastrous effects. The first thing I learned was that I could not party like the white girls. The white girls were white and would always have a blanket of purity over them, whereas I, an awkward virgin, could be called a slut because a guy looked my way. I knew it had to do with the color of my skin. Although many felt comfortable disparaging me during my college years, I was beginning to awaken to the fact that I had something particular about me that would strongly attract some people, but agitate others. A certain magnetism that I certainly never asked for, but often made me the villain or an easy scapegoat in the stories of my classmates. As much as I tried to keep to myself, people seemed to want to create their dramas around me. Often I danced in the chaos. Often I fanned the flames of the fire. It was interesting to see the waves I could make. There was one point during my senior year that I was so infamous in certain groups that I started to make up my own rumors just to see what would stick. Some call it the final stages of madness. I call it finding freedom in social bondage. To me, soft is a fantasy. You know how they say to be delulu about life? As a Black woman, you can never truly be delulu enough because society will try to humble you so fast. But you can dream. No one can monitor my dreams and tell me that it's not possible for me to live in peace and harmony outside of the rigid systems of white supremacy and capitalism. I hold on to the hope for a rested and well cared for body, opportunities for my children to grow up healthy, happy, and intellectually fulfilled, and have the best chance at whatever career they desire. I want to have the option to not get run down by life, but I don't think that's how it works, even for the most rich and famous among us. Sometimes you just have to pull back the labels and allow yourself to be. This essay is from my work in progress, A Soft Black Woman's Journey to Spiritual Entrepreneurship by Abbensetts-Dobson. Thank you for listening.